We thought Earth was just another primitive species begging for membership. Then their representative tilted her head, and the entire Galactic Council stopped breathing. Another cycle, another species begging for a seat at the table. That was the thought running through my mind as I settled into my designated pod in the Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Coalition. My name is Krelavox, and I have been a voting member of this illustrious body for nearly 300 standard rotations. In that time, I have seen exactly 247 species apply for membership. We accepted 93 of them. The rest, well, let us just say they did not meet our standards. The chamber itself was, as always, magnificent. Crystalline walls soared upward into a domed ceiling that displayed a real-time map of known space, thousands upon thousands of stars twinkling like precious gems against the velvet black. The council pods formed a massive circle, each one hovering precisely 2 meters off the polished obsidian floor, each representing a member species of the coalition. The acoustics were perfect, the lighting was perfect, everything was designed to inspire awe and, if I am being honest, a healthy amount of intimidation. Today's applicant. Earth. Some backwater planet in the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm. I had reviewed their file the previous evening while enjoying my nightly meal of fermented tuber paste, and I must confess I was not impressed. Single-planet civilization, barely capable of faster-than-light travel, still dealing with internal conflicts and resource distribution problems. Honestly, the fact that they even managed to fill out the application correctly was mildly surprising. High Chancellor Thune called the session to order with a resonant gong that echoed through the chamber. His species, the Valdrine, were known for their love of ceremony and protocol. He raised his primary manipulators and spoke in that deep, rumbling voice of his. Honored delegates, esteemed members, we gather today to review application number 7421 submitted by the species known as humanity from the planet designated Earth. The doors at the far end of the chamber slid open with a soft hiss. I adjusted my optical receptors to get a better look, curious despite myself. What walked through those doors was, frankly, underwhelming. A single human female, average height for her species according to the file, bipedal obviously, with that strange fur only on the top of her head that they seemed so fond of. She wore some kind of formal attire in dark blue with shiny metal decorations pinned to it. Her face was smooth, features small and symmetrical, and she moved with a casual confidence that seemed wildly inappropriate given the circumstances. This was Commander Alexis Rivera, Earth's diplomatic representative. She strode across that vast chamber floor like she owned the place, her footsteps clicking against the obsidian with an almost rhythmic precision. When she reached the center platform, she stopped, clasped her hands behind her back, and smiled up at us. Actually smiled. As if this was some sort of pleasant social gathering rather than a formal review that would determine her entire species' future in galactic society. I found myself exchanging glances with Senator Prill in the adjacent pod. His tentacles twitched in what I recognized as amusement. Oh, this was going to be entertaining. These primitive species always were, right up until we rejected their applications and sent them back to their little corners of space. High Chancellor Thune wasted no time diving into the particulars. He projected Earth's application onto the central holographic display, and immediately the deficiencies were obvious to anyone with functioning sensory organs. Commander Rivera, he began, his tone already carrying that particular flavor of bureaucratic condescension we all knew so well. Your application indicates that Earth achieved faster-than-light capability only 73 standard cycles ago. Most applicant species have at least 2 centuries of FTL experience before seeking membership. The human, Rivera nodded slowly. That is correct, High Chancellor. That was it. No excuse, no explanation, no desperate justification. Just calm acknowledgement. I felt one of my secondary arms twitch involuntarily. Did she not understand the gravity of this proceeding? Delegate Morvik spoke next, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns across the floor. Furthermore, your species still maintains separate governmental bodies, nation-states you call them. Earth lacks a unified planetary government. How can you speak for your entire species when your own world cannot agree on basic governance structures? We have a coordinating body called the United Earth Council, Rivera replied, her voice steady and clear. They authorized me to represent humanity in this application. While we maintain cultural and regional diversity in our governmental approaches, we are unified in our desire to join the galactic community. I could not help but let out a small clicking sound, my species' equivalent of a derisive snort. Cultural diversity, what a pleasant way to describe primitive tribalism and an inability to evolve past territorial squabbling. Ambassador Yeneth, whose species prided themselves on their economic achievements, brought up the next point. Her multiple eye stalks focused on Rivera with what looked like genuine confusion. Your resource distribution systems are fragmented and inefficient. Your file indicates that significant portions of your population lack access to basic necessities while others possess excessive surplus. This suggests a fundamental failure in economic management. Rivera's lips curved upward slightly. Not quite a smile, but close enough to be irritating. We are working on that, Ambassador. It is a complex challenge. Working on it. Marvelous. They were working on solving problems that most civilized species had resolved before they even invented the wheel. I decided it was my turn to contribute to this farce. I activated my communication crystal and leaned forward in my pod. Commander Rivera, your military expenditure data is, quite frankly, alarming. According to your own submitted records, humanity spends approximately 17% of your combined planetary resources on military capabilities. Military capabilities designed, one assumes, to fight each other, since until recently you had no knowledge of extraterrestrial civilizations. What does this say about your species' temperament? There. That should rattle her. We had rejected 3 species in the past decade alone for excessive militarization. But Rivera just looked up at me, and I swear, there was amusement dancing in those strange forward-facing eyes of hers. It says we take security very seriously, Council Member Krolvox. She pronounced my name perfectly, which was unsettling since most species butchered the guttural clicks. And yes, historically, human nations have engaged in conflicts with each other. We have a complicated past. Complicated past. What a delightfully vague euphemism. I had read the historical briefs. These humans had been slaughtering each other with increasingly creative efficiency for their entire recorded history. They had weapons capable of rendering their own planet uninhabitable, and they had come terrifyingly close to using them on multiple occasions. Senator Prill's tentacles waved in agitation. Your species nearly destroyed itself at least 4 times in the past 2 centuries alone. Nuclear brinksmanship, ecological collapse, pandemic mismanagement, artificial intelligence accidents. You are asking us to admit a civilization that seems pathologically incapable of self-preservation. Rivera tilted her head ever so slightly, and for just a moment something flickered across her face. Something that made my tertiary respiratory system skip a cycle. But then it was gone, replaced by that same calm, almost serene expression. And yet, Senator, here we stand. Still alive, still growing, still reaching outward. Survival is not about avoiding challenges, it is about adapting to them, overcoming them, and learning from them. The sheer audacity of this creature was beginning to genuinely annoy me. She stood there, representing a species that had barely crawled out of their own atmospheric envelope, lecturing us about survival.
Lecturing us about survival? Us.
Species that had navigated the stars for millennia. This was going to be a short session. I was already composing my rejection vote in my head. High Chancellor Thume shifted in his pod, his massive form causing the anti-gravity field to flicker momentarily. Let us address the issue of defensive capabilities more directly, Commander Rivera. The coalition requires that all member species be able to contribute to collective security. Our space is not without threats. Pirates, rogue AI constructs, occasional territorial disputes. What, precisely, can Earth offer in terms of military support? It was a standard question, one we asked every applicant. Most species launched into nervous presentations about their patrol fleets or defensive satellites, desperately trying to prove they were not completely helpless. I expected Rivera to fumble, to perhaps exaggerate Earth's modest capabilities, to show some sign of the anxiety that should accompany such a question. Instead, she clasped her hands in front of her and smiled. Actually smiled. What would you like to know specifically, High Chancellor? We have extensive experience in atmospheric combat, naval warfare, ground operations, orbital mechanics, cyber warfare, biological countermeasures, chemical weapons systems, nuclear arsenals, electromagnetic pulse devices, kinetic bombardment platforms, In psychological operations, we can provide detailed technical specifications for any category you wish to examine. The chamber went very, very quiet. I felt my sensory hairs stand on end. She had rattled off that list like she was reading a grocery inventory. Biological weapons, chemical systems, these were things that civilized species had abandoned centuries ago as barbaric and inefficient. Delegate Morvik's crystalline structure actually pulsed with a reddish hue indicating distress. Commander, surely you are not suggesting that Earth actively maintains chemical and biological weapons programs? Maintains? No, not in large stockpiles. Rivera replied, her tone conversational, almost friendly. We signed treaties limiting their production and use, but we certainly know how to make them. We have, after all, been doing it for quite some time. Mustard gas, nerve agents, weaponized anthrax, engineered viral pathogens. We got very creative during our various conflicts. Ambassador Yeneth's eye stalks recoiled. Various conflicts? You mean the wars you mentioned earlier? Oh, those were just the major ones, Rivera said, and I detected something in her voice now. Not quite pride, but not shame either. Something else. Something clinical. Humanity has engaged in approximately 14,000 significant armed conflicts in our recorded history. That is not counting minor skirmishes, border disputes, or civil unrest. We have been at peace, true global peace, for less than 3% of our recorded civilization. 14,000. I ran the calculation through my neural processor twice, because surely I had misheard. But no, she had definitely said 14,000 conflicts. My own species had experienced perhaps 20 wars in our entire history, and we considered ourselves a contentious people. Senator Prill's tentacles had gone completely still, which for his species indicated either deep thought or abject terror. Commander Rivera, you are describing a species in a constant state of warfare. How does anything function? How do you build cities, advance technology, create art, if you are perpetually destroying each other? Rivera's expression shifted slightly, and for the first time I saw something that looked almost like sadness cross her features. We multitask, Senator. Humans are exceptionally good at compartmentalization. We can build a hospital in one city while bombing another. We can compose symphonies while developing more efficient ways to kill. It is not something we are proud of necessarily, but it is what we are. Conflict has been the crucible in which humanity was forged. I leaned forward in my pod, unable to contain myself. You speak of this as if it is normal, Commander, as if species are supposed to be locked in perpetual combat with themselves. This is pathological. This is madness. She turned those forward-facing eyes directly at me, and I suddenly understood why humans had evolved with such unusual ocular placement. Predator eyes. Eyes designed to track prey with binocular precision. Council Member Krelevox, what you call madness, we call history. Every human alive today is descended from winners. Winners of territorial disputes, winners of resource competitions, winners of ideological struggles, winners of genetic lotteries that favored aggression, intelligence, and adaptability. We did not choose to evolve on a planet that demanded constant vigilance and competition, but we did evolve there, and it shaped us. High Chancellor Thum's voice carried a tremor I had never heard before. Shaped you into what exactly? Rivera's smile returned, but this time there was nothing friendly about it. Survivors. High Chancellor. We were shaped into survivors. And perhaps, if you are very fortunate, allies. The holographic star map above us seemed to dim slightly. Or perhaps that was just my imagination, but I found myself reconsidering every assumption I had made about the small, seemingly fragile creature standing in the center of our grand chamber. She was not nervous. She was not intimidated. She was not desperate for our approval. And that, I was beginning to realize, should terrify us. Ambassador Yeneth, perhaps trying to steer the conversation away from the unsettling topic of human military prowess, brought up what she clearly thought would be a safer subject. Commander Rivera, let us discuss your homeworld's environmental parameters. Your application lists Earth as a Class M planet, which typically indicates stable, moderate conditions. However, some of the data seems, well, unusual. Perhaps you could clarify. Rivera nodded agreeably. Of course, Ambassador. What would you like to know about Earth? Well, for instance, Yeneth's eye stalks swiveled to examine the data projection. Your atmospheric oxygen content is listed at 21%. That seems extraordinarily high. Most inhabited worlds maintain oxygen levels between 9 and 14%. Are you certain this figure is accurate? Completely accurate, Rivera confirmed. 21% oxygen. It makes things quite flammable, actually. We have to be careful with fire since our atmosphere is essentially primed to combust. Forest fires can spread at incredible speeds. I felt my respiratory systems constrict. 21% oxygen. That was barely below the threshold where spontaneous combustion became a regular occurrence. How did anything survive on such a volatile planet? Senator Prill seemed to share my concern. In your temperature ranges, Commander, the data indicates surface temperatures ranging from -89 degrees to +56 degrees Celsius. These are extreme fluctuations. How does your species endure such variations? Clothing, mostly, Rivera said with a shrug that seemed far too casual. Shelter, fire, air conditioning, heating systems. Humans are adaptable. We live comfortably in Arctic conditions and desert environments. Actually, we have permanent settlements in some of the most inhospitable regions of our planet. Antarctica, the Sahara, the Siberian tundra, the Amazon rainforest. If a place, etc. on Earth, someone has probably figured out how to live there. Delegate Morvik's crystalline form pulsed orange now, a color I had never seen him display. Commander, my species requires environmental conditions to remain within a 5-degree range for optimal function. A 10-degree shift would be catastrophic to our biology. You are describing temperature swings of over 140 degrees. This is not a habitable planet. This is a hellscape. We prefer the term home, Rivera replied, and there was definitely amusement in her voice now. But yes, Earth is what you might classify as a high-difficulty environment. We have weather patterns that can be rather intense. Hurricanes with wind speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that can tear apart reinforced structures, blizzards that dump meters of frozen precipitation in hours, monsoons that flood entire regions, droughts that last for years. Chancellor Thune's breathing had become noticeably heavier. And your people simply, endure these catastrophes. We predict them, prepare for them, and rebuild after them, Rivera said matter-of-factly. A major hurricane might hit our coastal regions and we evacuate, weather the storm, then return and reconstruct. It is part of life. Actually, some humans find extreme weather exciting. Storm chasing is a hobby for some people. Hobby. She said hobby. I tried to imagine voluntarily pursuing a catastrophic weather event for entertainment and found my cognitive processes rejecting the entire concept as illogical. But Rivera was not finished. Of course, weather is only part of Earth's charm. We also have a remarkable diversity of predatory species, apex predators on land, in water and in air, bears that can weigh over 600 kilograms and run at 50 kilometers per hour, great white sharks, with rows of serrated teeth designed to tear flesh, saltwater crocodiles that have remained essentially unchanged for millions of years because their design is so efficient at killing, box jellyfish with venom that can stop a human heart in minutes, poison dart frogs, cone snails, funnel web spiders. My translator implant was struggling to keep up with the species names, but the descriptions were clear enough. Earth was not a planet. It was a death trap masquerading as a habitat. Ambassador Yunit's voice had risen to a pitch I had never heard from her species. Commander, you are describing a planet where everything is actively trying to kill you. The weather, the fauna, the atmospheric composition. How does your species have time to develop civilization when you are constantly fighting for survival against your own environment? Rivera's smile widened, and I finally recognized the expression for what it was. Not nervousness, not politeness, pride. She was proud of this nightmare world she came from. Ambassador, you are looking at it backwards, she said, her voice taking on a lecturing quality that made my sensory hairs prickle. Earth did not hinder our development, it accelerated it. Every challenge our planet threw at us made us smarter, faster, more resilient. We learned to predict weather patterns, which gave us meteorology and climate science. We learned to defend ourselves against predators, which gave us tools and weapons. We learned to survive diseases, which gave us medicine and immunology. Earth did not try to kill us. Earth trained us. I felt something cold settle in my central nerve cluster. Train them. She spoke of her planet like it was a military academy, not a home. And suddenly, all those wars, all that conflict, all that creative violence made a terrible kind of sense. These humans had not learned to fight each other despite their environment. They had learned to fight each other because of it. They came from a world where violence was not an aberration but a survival skill, where adaptability was not a virtue but a necessity, where every single day was a test of worthiness to continue existing. Senator Prill's tentacles had begun to shake. What about diseases, Commander? Surely your medical technology has eliminated major pathogens. Rivera actually laughed. Laughed? Oh, Senator, our microorganisms are just as competitive as our macro life. We have viruses that mutate faster than we can develop vaccines. Bacteria that evolve antibiotic resistance in real time. Parasites that can alter host behavior, prions that can turn brain tissue into Swiss cheese. Humanity has been locked in an evolutionary arms race with microscopic life since before we climbed down from the trees. We have eradicated exactly 2 diseases in our entire history. Everything else is still out there, still evolving, still trying to find new ways to propagate. The chamber had gone silent except for the ambient hum of the life support systems. Every council member was processing the same horrifying realization. Earth was not a Class M planet. Earth was a death world. And humanity had not just survived there, they had thrived. High Chancellor Thum, perhaps attempting to regain some sense of control over the proceedings, straightened in his pod and adopted what I recognized as his most authoritative posture. His voice dropped to that deep, resonant tone he used when delivering judgments. Commander Rivera, while your planet's harshness is noted, surely you understand that surviving difficult conditions does not automatically qualify a species for coalition membership. Many primitive species endure hostile environments. It does not make them civilized. It does not make them sophisticated. It merely makes them, well, lucky to still exist. The words hung in the air, dripping with condescension. It was the sort of dismissal Thum had perfected over centuries, the verbal equivalent of patting a child on the head and sending them away. I had heard him use similar phrases dozens of times with applicant species who had overestimated their qualifications. Rivera stood absolutely still for a moment. Then, slowly, almost casually, she tilted her head to the side. Just a few degrees. Maybe 15, maybe 20. Her eyes never left Thum. She did not blink. She did not speak. She just looked at him with her head at that slight angle, and something in the chamber fundamentally changed. The silence was immediate and absolute. Every council member stopped moving. Prill's tentacles froze mid-wave. Morvik's color-shifting halted. Yeneth's eye stalks locked in position. Even the ambient sounds seemed to diminish, as if the chamber itself was holding its breath. I could not explain what happened in that moment, not rationally, not scientifically, but every instinct I possessed, every survival mechanism that millions of years of evolution had encoded into my genetic structure suddenly screamed at me that I was looking at a predator, not metaphorically, not symbolically, actually looking at an apex predator that was currently evaluating threat potential. That head tilt. It was such a small movement, so economical, so subtle, but it transformed Rivera completely. The diplomatic polish fell away like a shed skin, and underneath was something ancient, something honed by millennia of hunting and killing and surviving on a planet that actively tried to murder everything living on it. Her forward-facing eyes, which I had noted earlier with academic detachment, now seemed like targeting systems, binocular vision with depth perception accurate enough to track fast-moving prey, or threats. Her posture had not changed. She had not moved her hands. She had not made any aggressive gesture whatsoever, but somehow, impossibly, she now occupied more space than before. The chamber felt smaller. The distance between us felt insufficient. I realized, with a clarity that bordered on painful, that humans were not just survivors of a death world. They were the reason it was a death world. They were not the prey species that had learned to endure. They were the predator species that had dominated. Every other creature she had mentioned, the bears and sharks and venomous insects, those were what humans had competed against and won. Humans had not adapted to Earth. Humans had conquered Earth. That head tilt was a predator's assessment. The same motion a creature makes when calculating attack angles, when measuring distance, when deciding if prey is worth the energy expenditure to pursue. I had seen it in nature documentaries, in studies of hunting behavior across 1,000 species, but I had never ever been on the receiving end of it. Doom's breathing apparatus made a stuttering sound. His authority had evaporated in the face of something far more primal than political hierarchies. Rivera held the position for exactly 3 more seconds. I counted them. Each one felt like an eternity. Then, smoothly, she straightened her head, and the diplomat's mask slid back into place. The smile returned. The casual, unthreatening posture resumed. But it was too late. We had all seen what lurked underneath. "High Chancellor," she said, her voice perfectly pleasant, perfectly professional, as if the past 10 seconds had not just rewritten every assumption in the chamber. "I assure you, humanity is neither lucky nor primitive. We are purposeful, we are deliberate, and we are very, very patient. Not a threat, technically not a threat. But every being in that chamber understood the subtext. Humans did not need to make overt threats. They could communicate danger through the angle of their skull. They could project lethality through simple body language. They had evolved psychological warfare as a survival trait. I tried to remember how to properly operate my respiratory systems. This was no longer a membership review. This had become something else entirely. We were not evaluating whether humans were qualified to join the coalition. We were determining whether we could afford to have them outside the coalition, unmonitored and unrestricted. Senator Prill finally managed to unfreeze his tentacles. His voice, when he spoke, had lost all its earlier confidence. "Commander Rivera, perhaps we should discuss Earth's technological contributions to the coalition. What areas of research might humanity be prepared to share?" The Predator was back in its diplomatic cage, but none of us would forget that it was there. Rivera seemed to consider Prill's question with genuine thoughtfulness, as if the past few moments of existential terror had not just occurred. She clasped her hands behind her back again and began to speak in that same measured, conversational tone that was somehow more unsettling than any aggressive posturing could have been. "Our technological contributions would certainly be diverse, Senator Prill, but perhaps it would be more useful to explain some fundamental aspects of human biology and psychology that inform our capabilities. Since the Council seems concerned about our suitability, let me address those concerns directly." Oh no, I did not want her to address anything directly. I wanted this session to end so I could return to my quarters and recalibrate my entire understanding of xenobiology. But Rivera continued, undeterred by the palpable anxiety in the chamber. "Let us start with stress response. Most species, as I understand it, experience stress as a debilitating condition. Performance degrades under pressure. Cognitive function diminishes. Physical capabilities decline. Yes?" Several council members made gestures of agreement. This was basic biology. Stress was harmful. Every civilized species knew this. "Humans are different," Rivera said, and I detected that note of pride again. "Our stress response is a performance enhancer. When humans encounter danger, our adrenal glands release hormones that increase heart rate, sharpen focus, dilate our pupils for better vision, redirect blood flow to major muscle groups, and suppress pain perception. We literally become faster, stronger, and more alert when threatened. What you call a debilitating stress response, we call an adrenaline rush. Some humans actively seek out stressful situations because the sensation is pleasurable. We call them thrill seekers." Ambassador Yeneth's eye stalks had begun to tremble. "You are saying that danger makes you more capable, that threats improve your performance?" "Correct," Rivera confirmed. "It is an evolutionary adaptation. On Earth, the organisms that panicked and froze when threatened got eaten. The organisms that became hyper-focused and physically enhanced survived to reproduce. After a few million years of that selection pressure, you get humans. We are at our best when things are at their worst." Delegate Morvik's crystalline structure had gone completely transparent, which I had never witnessed before and suspected indicated some sort of system shock. "This is, I cannot even, what other biological peculiarities should we be aware of, Commander?" Rivera's smile took on an almost apologetic quality, which somehow made everything worse. "Well, there is our endurance. Humans are persistence hunters, you see. We are not the fastest species on Earth, not even close, but we are the best at simply not stopping. A human in decent physical condition can run for hours, Not sprint, obviously, but maintain a steady pace that will eventually overtake any prey animal. We can regulate our body temperature through sweating, which allows us to operate in conditions that would cause other species to overheat and collapse. Humans have literally chased prey animals to death by just following them until the animal's body gave out from exhaustion. I felt my tertiary heart skip several beats. They hunted by attrition, by simply refusing to stop pursuing. What kind of nightmare evolution produced a species that won through sheer stubborn refusal to quit? Our bones are reinforced with calcium deposits that can withstand tremendous impact. Rivera continued, apparently just getting started. Our skin is self-repairing and can seal minor wounds automatically. Our immune systems maintain libraries of every pathogen we have ever encountered and can mount targeted responses within hours. We have redundant systems for nearly every vital function. Humans have survived having portions of our brains removed, having organs fail, having limbs severed. We are, biologically speaking, extraordinarily difficult to kill. High Chancellor Thum had slumped in his pod, his massive frame seeming somehow diminished. "Commander, please, I must ask, is there anything that can stop humans?" Rivera paused, and for just a moment something soft crossed her features. "Other humans, usually. We are our own greatest threat, which is why we have spent so much effort learning to cooperate despite our competitive nature. Which brings me to another point the Council should understand. Humans, pack bond." "Pack bond?" Senator Prill's tentacles formed a question mark shape. "You mean social grouping? Most species form communities." "No, Senator. I mean we pack bond with everything, not just other humans. Though we do that with remarkable intensity, we bond with other species. We have domesticated hundreds of Earth's predators and prey animals. We keep them in our homes. We consider them family members. Humans have bonded with wolves and turned them into dogs. We have convinced obligate carnivores like cats to live with us. We form emotional attachments to plants, to robots, to spacecraft, to geographic locations. There are humans who have formed genuine affectionate bonds with cleaning devices." The absurdity of it seemed to break through my panic for a moment. "You bond with cleaning devices?" "We name them," Rivera said, completely serious. "We express sadness when they malfunction. We create fictional personalities for them. Humans have an almost pathological need to form connections. It is simultaneously our greatest weakness and our greatest strength, because once a human decides you are part of their pack, they will exhibit nearly irrational loyalty. Humans have died protecting strangers. We have sacrificed ourselves for ideals, for causes, for other species. That pack bonding instinct overrides our individual survival drive." I tried to process this. A species of persistence predators with enhanced stress response and suicidal loyalty tendencies. The galaxy was not ready for this. The galaxy would never be ready for this. Ambassador Yenet's voice was barely a whisper. "Commander Rivera, what you are describing is not a civilization. What you are describing is I do not even have words. You are apex predators with advanced technology and emotional attachment issues." Rivera's smile widened. "Yes, Ambassador. That is exactly what we are. And before you ask the obvious question, yes, we are aware of how unusual we are. We have been observing coalition species for several years now through your public data streams. We know that most of you evolved on garden worlds with stable climates and manageable challenges. We know that warfare is rare among galactic civilizations. We know that our history of violence and our biological adaptations are extreme outliers." She paused, letting that sink in before delivering what I could only describe as the final blade. "But here is what you need to understand. Humans did not apply for coalition membership because we need you. We applied because we think the galaxy needs us. There are threats out there in the dark, pirates, rogue machines, hostile entities we have not even encountered yet. And when those threats come, when something truly dangerous emerges, you are going to want a species that was forged in violence, honed by extinction-level challenges, and too stubborn to know when to quit. You are going to want humans on your side." The silence that followed was absolute. She was right. I hated that she was right. Every rational analysis of galactic security threats suddenly looked different through the lens of having a species of persistence hunting pack bonding stress-enhanced apex predators as allies rather than unknowns. My entire worldview had not just crumbled, It had been systematically dismantled and reconstructed into something I barely recognized, and Commander Alexis Rivera had done it without raising her voice once. High Chancellor Thum did not even bother with the standard deliberation protocols. His voice, when he finally managed to speak, carried none of its earlier authority. It sounded tired, resigned, and perhaps just a touch desperate. Council members, I believe we have heard sufficient testimony to render a decision. All those in favor of approving Earth's application for coalition membership. Every single pod lit up with an affirmative signal. On unanimous approval. In 300 rotations of service, I had never seen a unanimous approval on the first vote. We usually debated for hours, sometimes days, but apparently when faced with the choice between having humans inside the coalition where we could monitor them or outside the coalition where they could do whatever they wanted unsupervised, the decision became remarkably simple. My manipulator moved to the affirmative signal almost on its own. Some deep, primal part of my brain that was much older and wiser than my conscious mind understood that saying no to these creatures was not advisable. Keep your friends close and your predators closer, as the old saying went, or perhaps that was a human saying. I would need to look that up, if I ever felt safe enough to research human culture, which seemed unlikely. The vote is unanimous, Thum announced, with all the enthusiasm of someone declaring their own funeral arrangements. Earth's application is approved. Welcome to the Galactic Coalition, Commander Rivera. Rivera's expression remained professionally pleasant, but I caught that slight curve at the corner of her mouth, satisfaction. Not surprise, I noted. She had known how this would end. She had probably known before she walked through those doors. Humans, I was learning, were excellent at calculating outcomes. Thank you, High Chancellor. Esteemed council members, she said, executing a small bow that seemed respectful but somehow also felt like a predator acknowledging worthy opponents. Humanity looks forward to contributing to the coalition's goals and working alongside all member species. We believe this partnership will be mutually beneficial for everyone involved. Mutually beneficial? Right. Beneficial like having a trained attack beast living in your dwelling. Technically safer than having it outside, but you never quite forgot what it was capable of doing if it chose to. She turned and walked back across that obsidian floor, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence of the chamber. The doors slid open, and Commander Alexis Rivera, representative of humanity, apex predator of a death world, disappeared into the corridor beyond. The moment she was gone, the chamber erupted in agitated communication. Trill's tentacles were gesticulating wildly. Morvik was cycling through colors I had never seen. Yeneth's eye stalks were tangled in what looked like a panic formation. Thum simply sat in his pod staring at the space where Rivera had stood, looking like he had just aged several decades in the span of an hour. I settled back into my pod and tried to organize my thoughts into something resembling coherence. We had just approved membership for a species of pack-bonding persistence predators from a planet that actively tried to kill them on a daily basis, a species that became more dangerous when threatened, that had been engaged in near-constant warfare for their entire history, that could form emotional attachments to inanimate objects, and would die for those attachments. What, exactly, had we just unleashed on the galaxy? Oh, I knew the official reasoning. Better to have them as allies. Better to integrate them into our systems. Better to benefit from their unique perspectives and capabilities. All perfectly logical arguments that I had voted for myself. But deep in my central nerve cluster, in that part of me that still remembered what it was like to be prey, I understood the real truth. We had not accepted humanity into the coalition. Humanity had accepted us. They had walked into our grand chamber, showed us exactly what they were, and dared us to say no. And we, all of us sophisticated, civilized, evolved species, had collectively decided that saying no was too terrifying to contemplate. I pulled up Earth's file one more time on my personal display and scrolled through the data with new understanding. Every war, every plague, every natural disaster, every extinction-level event that had struck that hellish planet. And through it all, humans just kept going. Kept adapting, kept surviving, kept thriving. There was a human phrase I had encountered in my research, something about tigers and riding them. You could not dismount safely, so you just held on and hoped for the best. The Galactic Coalition had just climbed onto a tiger named humanity. We would smile and call them partners and allies and members in good standing. And we would never ever forget what happened when Commander Rivera tilted her head. The session adjourned. I returned to my quarters, and I began updating my personal files with a new designation for Earth. Not Class M. Not even Death World. I labeled it Apex World, home of the predators that scared other predators. Welcome to the coalition, humanity. We were absolutely doomed.